Hello, everyone. As promised, we are back again with yet another inspiring story. A story of immense courage, creativity, and immeasurable goodness. It's a story of Raha Foundation. And today we have here with us the creator, founder, and director, Dr. Sarika Kulkarni. All right, Dr. Kulkarni, thank you so much for coming and sharing your time and space with us. Before we go ahead, I would thank you. Before we go ahead about your work per se, I would like to know a little bit about you as a person.
Sure, sure. I'm assuming that you want to know a little bit about my professional life and not so much about my personal life, right?
No, no, but however, I would like to know the Sarika Kulkarni as a person too.
Okay, 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 fine. So I am, of course, an extremely passionate human being. Always have been wanting to give my 100%, to whatever I am doing, which is kind of very good because it has taken me a lot far. But it can also be a little bit. It can pose a lot of obstacles in your life because you don't want to compromise with anything. You want to give your 100%. So you don't want to accept any mediocre quality in anything in your life. So but I think in long term it definitely gives you very rich dividends and takes you, because then whatever you are building in your life is very robust. It's not superficial. It's deep down, it's very robust, and it's concrete. It's something that you is you can find the roots deep down there. So I think that's where the tall tree stands, right? So yeah, so that's me. And I have been again wanting to do a lot of experimentation in my life. I love taking risk because again, as I said, I think risk is also, it has always been calculated simply because I've been very passion driven, but passion driven through my mind and not so much by my heart. I've rarely allowed my heart to rule my mind. So I started my career as a professor. I was teaching. I have a PhD in management, and I was teaching at leading business schools in Mumbai, like Bajaj, JBIMS, and SPJI Institute of Management Studies. And a chance to start an IT enterprise, ITES business, while on my maternity leave. I just had delivered a baby, second baby. My first child was just 2.5 years old, my daughter, and my
Okay.
second boy was born. And it was
Hmm.
like, most of the mothers would, this would be a resting period for most of the mothers. For me, I
Absolutely.
thought this was a great time to take some risks as far as my professional life is concerned, because I was on my maternity leave. I had nothing to lose. I could always go back to my job. And I started my ITES business when my son was just 2.5 months old, and my daughter was 3 years old.
Oh my
So I
God. I mean, this is, I don't know what to say. I mean, as you rightly said, that, otherwise people would generally take this time to take rest. And you did just the opposite. What was going on through your mind? I'm really keen and interested here.
Uh, See, I didn't want to become a full-time entrepreneur ever, because I didn't have that confidence, simply because I don't come from an entrepreneurial family. Nobody in my family has ever been an entrepreneur. All
Hmm,
of us
hmm,
have always been working people, work
hmm,
with
hmm,
stable jobs.
hmm,
So I think I didn't want to be that outlier in my family. I still had to convince myself that I can do it. Yes, I can do it. And I wanted that cushion of my job.
hmm,
Otherwise it would
hmm,
have been very difficult to take a leave, long leave from job and try an entrepreneurship. It was
hmm,
not
hmm,
possible. But here I had like 3 months of, we only had 3 months of maternity leave in those days. Girls
hmm,
nowadays are much more
hmm.
fortunate, because you have like 6 months at least paid. So we had 3 months of
Hmm.
maternity leave. So I thought 3 months, and I can always extend my maternity leave by a couple of months, because with no questions asked, right? People will always know that, okay, it's to be with the child.
Hmm,
So I
hmm,
thought,
hmm.
if I don't do it now, I will never be able to do it. You know. So,
Wow. Hmm.
so I thought this is a great time to start something new, try something new, take those risks, because
Hmm.
these were calculated risks, and check that box, in my life, that yes, I've been there, done that,
Hmm.
didn't
Hmm.
succeed. So I'm
Hmm.
back into my job, and so that was what was going on in my mind, honestly.
You use
And
the
it was
right
also
word.
good because, yeah.
You use the right word for yourself. You said robust. So I think that completely describes you.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry. You were saying something.
No. And it was also good because, I was feeding the baby. So it was easy for me to put the baby in the pram next to my office, in my office next to my chair. And so, kind of, I have done a lot of meetings with my child sleeping in the pram next to me. And, in the initial period. And my daughter actually sitting and doing drawing next to the boat meeting table. So lots of all these things I could do because the children were so young. I was not bothered about the school. I was not bothered about their homework. You know, uh, all these things were not there on my agenda. So I
Hmm.
could
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
focus a lot better on, being an entrepreneur, because I could do being a mom and being an entrepreneur simultaneously, because they were very, very young.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I really feel that for a woman, that's a great time to become an entrepreneur.
Exactly. I mean, you made it, like a dream come true for every, mother who's expecting. All right. So I'm also interested to know that you've taken all these different steps and experimented so much. Um, what about your family? Did you get the support from your family?
Yes, oh
How
yes.
was it for
Otherwise, it
them?
was not possible.
Hmm.
Like, for example, my mother was there. She would take care of the children while I would be, whenever required, I would keep the kids with mother. She would
Hmm.
take care of the children. We needed some financial backing to start the business. And obviously, as I said, I was not sure if I can do it. So it was a risk capital kind of which was required, and my husband provided that to us.
Hmm.
My
Hmm.
father had just retired, and he also joined me. So it
Hmm.
was good because then I had somebody to, so the phenomenal backing from everybody in the family.
Hmm.
Even when I came back from my maternity leave, I had my mother-in-law, father-in-law to chip in whenever I needed help with the children. So I think without family support, it is not possible, especially at that time when you have a child who's you are feeding, and there's
Hmm.
another
Hmm.
a little grown-up child who's not so much grown up to understand your responsibilities, and not too small also that you know.
Absolutely. Hmm. Hmm.
So she
That's
was
such a
asking questions.
huge.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, I would be interested. What was she asking?
So she would asking questions like, why are you working? You went to office in the morning, you are again going in the night, you are again sitting with a laptop, so what is going on? And she was too young to understand what was happening.
True, true.
And, and she was old enough to ask questions. So that was a very tricky age my daughter was in.
And this was
So
how many years ago, Doctor?
this was in 2001.
2001. Okay, so now she's a grown-up
Oh,
lady almost.
she's an adult working, and when I remind her of all these questions, she dismisses saying, I never asked them.
So he's
And the
definitely
boy
very
who
proud
was
of.
just born, absolutely, he's now 2 decades old. He's 20, and
Hmm.
he's in his final year engineering.
Wow, wow. That's been quite a journey, Doctor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
then I
so
ran this business for 10 long years, and up
hmm,
to
hmm.
2010, I was running this business. I
Okay.
subsequently quit my job as a professor
Hmm,
because I found my niche as an entrepreneur, and I realized that this is, it's always great to be a job creator than a job seeker, because I could do so much, with
hmm,
my
hmm,
passion and with my time and with my energy, and the power that I have as an entrepreneur, that is, I could do so much for people.
hmm,
And
hmm,
so I continued to so I quit my job and I became a full-time entrepreneur.
hmm.
And then there was no looking back. Honestly, we really grew the business big time. And I, I, I became extremely humbled with the opportunity, because, as I said, I realized the power that an entrepreneur has, and that had a phenomenally humbling effect on me. You know,
Hmm, hmm,
and it was a great phase in my life.
hmm. And I'm interested in finding out a little more. I want to pick your brain on this. You mentioned that you let your mind rule rather than your heart or emotions. I am
Yeah,
guessing here,
yeah.
right? Could you expand on that a little more?
Sure. Like, for example, the initial success was amazing. I mean, and that always kind of forces, a young entrepreneur who has first time an entrepreneur, and you see success immediately.
Hmm,
And when you allow your mind to rule your heart to rule your mind, you tend to get a lot of defocused, and that is
hmm,
what also kind of happened to us. And they were like thoughts like, I mean, since we are so successful here, why don't we do a vertical expansion, do a horizontal expansion? Let's expand the business by doing this, adding this activity. Let's also do this, let's also do
hmm,
that. There
hmm,
were
hmm,
lots of
hmm,
ideas, there were lots of thoughts, but I soon realized that I cannot get defocused, because, as I said, I was always using my mind, and I kind of did that analysis that what happens when I actually do what my heart tells me to do. I
hmm,
will get
hmm,
one, I will get defocused. Two, I will need money. I'll need more money to expand, and the money I've earned from business A, I will put into business B, which will be very unfair.
hmm,
So I did a lot of analysis, because I was not allowing my heart to rule over me. And ultimately I decided that no, I'm not doing that. Let me just be very, very focused. Let me just grow this business big time. Let me not get defocused. And which was good, because then it allowed us to do a lot of experimentation within the existing business only. For
hmm, hmm,
example, we experimented with dropout kids. We had so, as I said, I always had this passion to do something for the people, etc. I
hmm,
thought,
hmm.
why not an opportunity to drop out kids? It was a difficult proposition, because
Wow,
in
yes.
IT, yeah, not easy. So,
Hmm,
but we
hmm,
said, let's
hmm,
experiment, let's try.
hmm,
On day one, we took a batch of about 10 boys and girls. I mean, 5 boys, 5 girls, and we said, let's experiment with teaching them the skills of working in an IT business.
hmm.
And on the first day, I realized that the training program actually has to start with toilet training, because they had never seen a toilet in their life. And it was very fascinating, but they proved to be some of the best employees. And again, here I think uh, probably my heart would have said that don't do it. I mean, you are very passionate, but you would never look at this. It was a very approach which was something which is not very common. Even now it is not very common, but we did it
Mm-hmm.
15 years ago. And so I think a lot of these decisions that we took, we had when your mind rules, what happens is that you sit down and do a detailed analysis of all the pros and cons, and then create a strategy which again becomes very robust. I love to use that word. So which is extremely robust, and
Hmm. Hmm.
which also has plan B built into it. A backup option, a plan B built into it, and that
Hmm. Hmm.
even if you fall, you don't fall that miserably. That is what happens.
Wow. Oh, okay. Because this was really interesting where the way you put it out, that you
Yeah,
let your mind rule instead of your heart, and the experimentation that you did with the dropout kids. Could you tell us a little more about that?
yeah,
That's
sure,
something
sure.
very unusual. I mean, I haven't heard.
So it was usually our training program would be for about 2 months to 3 months, but in this case we had to expand it to 6 months because we also needed them to speak English and a lot of things, basic coding and
Mm-hmm.
quality perception of quality. We had to teach them because what quality was for them and what quality is for us was very different. There was a big gap between that, so we had to do all of that. And 6 months training program with 80% success rate. 88 out of 10 people we hired, and they became some of the very good employees simply because they valued this opportunity. They thought that and this was a life changing opportunity for them. And then every day I would talk to them that how this job was making a difference to their life, because I wanted to calibrate that impact that was happening in their life because of this opportunity.
Hmm.
And every day I would feel so amazing. I mean, they would say, for example, they would tell me that one fine day they would bring a box of seeds saying that we just bought a bike because bank has given us a loan, which was not possible otherwise, because now we are salaried. We are getting salaries, so we have become bankable, we are getting loan, we have got a bike. I'm the first one to buy a motorcycle in my entire village. Then the girls would also come and say that my parents are not forcing me to get married because now I'm earning money. So, I can
So
live
many
my life. And
changes. Yeah.
so many changes. Then these people became role models for their other youths in their own villages, and other youths wanted to become like them. So, which was a very positive thing, which we had never anticipated could happen, because then we realized that nothing works like a demonstration effect, and they became like a big demonstration in their own villages, that what happens when you get a good job, what happens when you are sincere in your job, how it can entirely change. And somebody will say that we just repaired our house. Somebody would come and tell me that we just built a my brother wants to study, my sister wants to study. So I think there were some of the direct impacts, like direct impact on their own life, were amazing, but there were huge amount of cascading effect on their families, their villages, other youths in their own families, which was like unbelievable. I mean, and as I said, all of this had a kind of, it was my determination to contribute to development sector was the resolve was becoming stronger and stronger with each passing story. And I was like more and more determined that once I, obviously, one of the intentions of by then, by 2016-17, we had decided that at a great opportunity we would sell the business, because one, it had become big. Two, the circumstances at my personal life had changed, because the boy who was just born had already become 7-8 years old with a proper school life. My daughter, who was 2.5 years, was already about 10 years, 10, 11 years old, and she couldn't miss school. I had to kind of focus more on attention on their schools and their projects and the exams and so on and so forth. So many things. My father, who had just retired, had become 7-8 years older, so he wanted to sleep in the afternoons, take some nap in the afternoons. So a lot of situation had changed, and the company had become very big. We were already about 300 strong organization by then. It started in 2011, and by 2018-19 we already had about 350 400 strong organization. So I was and then we were already, a lot of companies, American companies, had started approaching us to do a buyout, and we were interested because of this. And by then I also felt that I can probably do much better in development sector than continue is a very out and out for profit sector. So that that resolve was getting stronger and stronger. And finally, 2010, I sold the business to one of the largest American players in the same in the same space. And as I said, we what we were doing honestly with dropout kids was building their capacity and showing them a direction. That Ra is a Hindi word, as you know, for path.
But,
And so when I sold the business, we were already entrepreneurs. I was an entrepreneur. So I wanted to become a social entrepreneur. And that's when I decided to start my own foundation, and we called it Raha Foundation, because we thought the journey was much more exciting than the destination. If the journey is good, you will anyway reach your destination. So Ra
Well
Foundation was
said.
started in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
The story behind foundation, and idea was that I will use my management background and entrepreneurship skills to
Mm-hmm.
create sustainable livelihood opportunities. That was the original thought with which I started foundation, which is what I was also doing in my own business, creating those livelihood opportunities for people, becoming a job creator. In this case, I was thinking that I will probably help people start micro businesses, help them kickstart those micro businesses. And
Empowering
subsequently,
people. Hmm.
exactly.
Hmm.
Subsequently, I started a couple of projects in the slums of Mumbai, but a chance visit to the tribal areas of Maharashtra made me realize that this is where my true calling was. Mumbai slums, there were lots of other people who were doing work. There were lots of other organizations. It was easy for me to exit by doing a kind of a train the trainer program. And so I found my true calling in the tribal areas of Maharashtra in 2014, when I a chance visit. I saw that the entire road was dotted with young girls, women with pots of water on their head, and I could see poverty. Poverty was like visible, misery was visible. And I thought, what is the use of working in Mumbai? Let's go to the one of the most challenging areas, which is so nearby. It's just 3.5 hours drive from Mumbai. It's just outskirts of Mumbai, yet so far, in terms of development, so near and yet so far. That was the, that's how we describe them. And so we thought, let's work here. And I started visiting more often. And Ra Foundation became a tribal focused organization in 2014. So in the last 6 years, 6.5 years now, we are only working in the tribal areas of Maharashtra, which is 2 blocks of Palghar district. And we, again, a lot of interesting stories as to how our program really organically evolved. As I said, my idea was to start livelihood opportunities. And initially, we started with livelihood opportunities for women, but soon the number of women in our livelihood program started dwindling. And I was wondering as to why they are dwindling, why they are not interested in attending the program, why the absenteeism was increasing. And we soon realized that water was such a big impediment to livelihood that women were spending more and more time fetching water. As the summer season was approaching, women had to spend more and more time on fetching water. And water being the basic need and the most important priority, they obviously didn't have time for anything else but water. So we realized that unless you remove these impediments to livelihood, I mean, no livelihood opportunity can ever become sustainable. So then we added water to our program, and once water was available, we also realized that how a virtuous cycle of growth and development can build once water is available. So we then started agriculture. We started our program on women empowerment, and many other programs actually followed. While working there, we saw the miserable condition the tribal artisans were in. In Maharashtra is not rich like in terms of handicrafts or traditional art. Rajasthan, Gujarat are extremely rich in traditional art and handicraft. Maharashtra, there's nothing. If you actually see Maharashtra, there's hardly any handicrafts there. There's only traditional art form, which are tribals. It's their art form, but they were not able to commercialize their art form, and they were actually migrating to work on construction sites. It was a very miserable thing for us. I mean, it's so sad. The artistic hands were actually building houses. Then we thought, let's do something for them also. And then we did a gap analysis, and we realized that a couple of things emerged out of that gap analysis. One was, of course, it was important to hone their skills, make it more commercially relevant. Their skills had to be more commercially relevant. The second was that providing market linkages, that last mile connectivity was required. So in 2016, we started another affiliate social business called Raha Creative Designs, which just sells the tribal art products. What we do is we have this group of tribal artisans and women who make these beautiful products for us. The designs are provided by us, raw material is provided by us, and once the
Okay.
products are ready, we buy outright from them. We just pay them whatever money is due to them. Selling is our responsibility. We run a shop in
Okay.
Mumbai. We do corporate gifting, and so that's another business I'm currently. So I'm a managing trustee on Ra Foundation, and a director on Ra Creative Design. And it works like a hybrid model. Foundation is a for-purpose organization that focuses on social progress, and Ra Creative Design is a for-profit social business that provides market linkages to the tribal art products.
Beautiful.
And
Yes.
our work with tribal artists actually also gave us immense recognition. We were chosen as the top 50 social businesses in the handicraft sector by none other than Harvard Business School.
Yes.
And we also received a social innovation grant. We also received a social innovation grant from them to start an art studio. So we have a Varli Art Studio, fully funded by Harvard Business School and Tata Trust in Jawar. And yeah, in last 6.5, 7 years, we are celebrating 10 years of our existence this year. And we have already impacted over 30,000 tribals directly and many others indirectly. And we still think the journey has just begun.
This is, I don't think so. Just half an hour, 45 minutes is enough to listen to all the stories that you have to tell us. It's incredible. I mean, I was also thinking the way everything you started realizing when you were doing your first entrepreneurship with the IT sector, and then how you were helping people, and that fell into place, and you started with development sector, and then while in development sector, the other things started falling in place. It's this was meant to be for you. It was as if planned or chalked out for you completely. Amazing. Okay, you mentioned here about the livelihood opportunities which you were working on earlier, and then you realized that the water problems that the
Yeah.
villagers were
Yeah.
facing, the people were facing. When you say realized, this is, I wanted to know, was this brought to your notice, or when you were traveling around, you saw what was happening firsthand, and that's when you realized something needs to be done.
So as I mentioned that the number of women in our livelihood program started dwindling. I mean, when we enrolled about 100 women in September, and by December there were like 10 women. Suddenly they vanished. They stopped coming. January, another 10 women vanished. January end, there were like 20 women who stopped coming, and by these 10 women, I said, "Huh, they are busy. They are busy." Another 10 women not coming. You know, these women, they are not very expressive. They will not talk to you. They will not look into your eyes. They will not talk to you very openly and clearly about what is the problem. And so they would just tell me that there's some problem, and they've stopped coming. But when January and another 20 vanished, I realized there is a bigger problem than what is being brought to my notice. I decided to shadow these women. I said, okay, tell me where these women live. I went to their houses, and I was told that they have gone to fetch water. And this was a time of the livelihood program used to run at. And I'm like, why have they gone to fetch water? Where have they gone? So they said, no, they have probably gone nearby village. I said, okay, what time do they leave to start fetching water? They said they leave at about 10 in the morning. Next day morning, I reached their house at 9:30. And when I started walking with them, I started shadowing them. I realized what the problem it was. Maximum 3 pots of water on their head and one small bucket in their hand, probably about 60 liters, walking for about 1.5 hours each way to fetch water, and then walk back with only that much water, which is enough only for food, drinking and cooking. That's about it. Health, hygiene, everything is compromised because of this. And this was just January and February first week, and that's what they told me that by March they spend the entire day fetching water. By May, they don't even know where the water is coming from. They actually have to go in search of water, because there are very few bodies which remain which has water. So honestly, this when we say that the next war will be fought on water, I could visualize that when you go there in May, you can actually see small water is like pots and pots waiting to be filled up. It's a very, very pathetic situation. So that's when our program on water began. And in our program on water, what we do is that we create water secure communities, as in we enhance the capacity of rainwater harvesting structures and or build new ones. And we look at both what is the demand in this village, as in how many people live in this village, what is their drinking water and cooking requirement, what is the hygiene requirement, how much cattle are there in this village, what is the drinking water requirement for the cattle, what is the agriculture requirement in this village. Based on that, we design a supply side of the water,
Mm-hmm.
which is that how many rainwater harvesting structures should we build, what is the hydrogeology of the area, what is the status of the groundwater table. So we do a lot of technical studies, and based on that, we curate this. So we have so far made about 95 villages water secure. When I say water secure, I mean that water is available right in their villages throughout the year. So women in 15 minutes they can just fill water, and they
And
have
this
all the
is,
time in the day to pursue their other conservation activity, or just focus on their health, or just relax if nothing
yeah,
else.
yeah, absolutely. And this is in 95 villages, you said? Wow,
30,000 people.
wow, incredible, incredible. I'm at loss of words, as you can just see. Okay, before we leave, I have a few more questions, Doctor, for you. Um, it's not going to be a simple answer, I'm sure of this. But how do you manage all this? Now, this is not only one project you're dealing with. There's several projects going on at the same time. You're at least handling 50,000, 20 to 50,000 people doing different kinds of projects. And this is again not based out of just one place. The demography is also pretty huge. So how do you manage? How do you go about, with your team and your time, space?
Again, I think as they that beautiful saying that when you want to do something good, nature conspires, and gives you that. Honestly, it has been my case. I have found some unbelievable teammates. So we have a very strong field staff of about 15 people. All of them are tribals. All of them are local, and they are
Oh,
super passionate. I mean, for example, if I call them, they'll tell me that I don't have time to talk to you because I'm busy on the field. I mean, they're that passionate. They will. And again, I have amazingly passionate team in Mumbai office. So we have about 15 odd people in the field office, and about 10 people in Mumbai office. So we are just 25 of us. Very lean organization, but extremely passionate people. I think that, and of course, we do use. We have again, since I have a strong management background. I had a strong entrepreneurship background. We have put in place a lot of systems and processes which are again I'm using that word, which are very robust. So allow us to track like sitting here, I know what is exactly happening where. So that tracking becomes very real time, and people are honest, people are very passionate, people have dreams. I would call them intrapreneurial. They are all intrapreneurial. So as a result, I think we have been able to manage all this on people strength, on systems and processes strength, and uh, yeah, we use IT extensively. So you know, very.
You
So
have
I
a
think
strong background.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, I think that helps.
Hmm. Hmm. All right. All right. Going back to
Not for profit sector, it's like a
exactly.
we talk about social return on investment. What is
Hmm.
your return? We
Hmm.
continue to use
That's a
that
new one.
jargon, that angle.
Hmm. Hmm. So you mentioned about the Harvard Business School and Tata, from where you've got your funds. I'm a little more interested because I'm sure a lot of social entrepreneurs will be watching this. Um, how does one go about trying to secure funds, maybe for their organization?
So, if funding in general you're talking about, or funding for that particular art thing you're
For
talking about?
particular, yes, for particular art, for particular
Art,
maybe a
yeah.
segment.
Yeah. So I think the first important step is to analyze the donor kind of let me what do I call it? So the different organizations support different type of activities. So I think what is important is what you are doing and what kind of organization is likely to support you. I think doing that analysis is very important. So we have a database of type of organization who could probably support us for water, who could support us for agriculture program, who could support us for art program, And then constantly, what I have also done is that I have also signed up for a lot of newsletters, newsletters of a lot of organizations that I keep on getting that, this organization, you can apply to this organization for funding. This organization is organizing some competition where art-based organizations can apply. So there are constantly, so I think getting in that groove, doing a lot of networking, constantly reading on the internet, about what is happening in your sector, and just keeping abreast, to who's doing what and who's donating for what. I think that helps.
All right.
So a
Thank you.
similar
Thank you.
kind of a newsletter came to me where there was this outreach program by Harvard Business School, which I applied to and got chosen.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. That really helps. Another thing I would be really interested to know about when I was going through your site is about Adi Katha, tribal tourism. That's something which is so fascinating. I haven't really come across anything like that ever. So, can you please tell us a little more about this?
So, I always say that the longer the broader impact that our different programs are going to have is preserving cultural heritage. It sounds too lofty, but I think we are that is my ultimate objective, that uh, by working on water, by working on agriculture, by working on women empowerment locally, what we are doing is we are stopping migration. And once you stop migration, the tribals, their culture, their belief, their traditions, their art forms, their dance forms are extremely rich. And migration destroys everything. So once they stay back in their own villages, they start practicing all this much more regularly, which is so beautiful, and which is what we want to showcase. That these are tribals who are so amazing. We don't want to display them in pity. I mean, they're like poor tribals. No, they
Absolutely. Yeah.
are amazing. Their dances are so unique. And so we want more and more people to learn about this cultural heritage that is so near Mumbai. We are so proud of. And that's what kind of motivated us to start Adikatha. And we have taken, we curate all these trips depending on who the audience is. I mean, if it is college students and school students, then we add that part of Shramdan to our program, where they go and actually do some hard work. They help us build ponds, they help us build dams. Whatever work is going on, they will do hard labor there. They will learn the tribal art form there. They will talk to people. They will teach a skill or two. They will go and paint the school walls. So something which is involves some activity where they feel good about contributing. Then tribal village walk is part of that. Dancing with the tribals, doing their traditional art form. Dance form is another one. Learning their traditional art form is part of the entire day's schedule. Eating with tribals in a hut, which is the food cooked on firewood. So that's another part of this. Overall, a very enriching day that we plan. I mean, if it is corporates, then we also do team building exercises with tribals. So,
All right. This
depending
is
on what is the need of the group, we curate.
wow. Okay.
And
And
it's just 3.5 hours drive
from Mumbai. All right. So when you say that, you have these team building exercises with the tribals and you can sit and eat with them, is there a team, or are you talking about the whole village that, one gets to participate with or interact with?
We choose one village. We work across 95 villages. So depending on how big the group is, we choose one village, and there we will do all the activities.
So
there's
all
village
the
walk.
So the villagers are all participating in this.
Yes,
Entire village.
entire village.
Okay, incredible. Wow. Are there any upcoming events coming up that you would like to
Yes,
share?
now the water programs have just started. Our water programs have just started. So a lot of these check dams, etc., are under construction now. And Adhikatha is, of course, going on. A lot of people now don't want to take flights. They prefer just taking your car and
Exactly.
going for a holiday. We are curating a lot of trips for such visitors.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
Adhikatha is on in full swing. If all programs actually are simultaneously going on. So lots of things to look forward to in coming months. Because last year was a complete,
Lal.
we couldn't do anything. So last year and this year, so both the years programs are being implemented this year. So there's a humdrum of activity going on.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So last year, how did you manage, Doctor? I mean, what was the scenario?
We couldn't go, I mean, initially it was first 15 days just went in understanding, what is the impact, how long is this going impact going to be, and what are we going to do. Luckily, the villages were not that badly affected. There were just few cases here and there, and that too from people who went from Mumbai and stuff like that. Otherwise, ballpark villages were fine. We couldn't travel at all. I mean, after March, I think last trip I made last year was on 8th of March, Women's Day, and after that, directly in September. So,
Okay.
yeah, we definitely, I think it was an opportunity for us to train our field staff. So, and they really led from the front. It was, we thought it was a great opportunity to train them, give them that confidence that you can lead from the front, uh, put in place some more systems and processes, teach them the likes of Zooms and Google Meets, so that we could continue to have conversation with them and see their faces when having conversation. So, so I think it was fine. Actually, we did pretty well, and also as I said, we looked at it as the opportunity was that people could not migrate, so every single villager was back there in their own houses. So we could do a much better engagement with the entire village because everybody was there. We focused a lot on agriculture program because everybody was there. So we couldn't do water program at all because, for water, while villagers are required, you also need hard machinery. You need the GCs and Cochleans of the world, which could not be transported. So no water project could be undertaken last year. We focused a lot on agriculture and we scaled up our agri program big time. Actually, last year.
Over the years, what are the changes that you have seen in the mindsets of people? Because I'm sure you would have faced a lot of obstacles and challenges. As I can see you, you're sitting here and brimming with ideas. How did people over the years, take to you as a person like this with so much vibrancy and energy and willing to go ahead and take risks? Because everyone is not like that, Doctor. So, how did you overcome those challenges and how did you see people change over the years?
I think in general, I've been again quite fortunate to meet some great people, whether it is my beneficiaries that I'm talking about, whether it is team members that I'm talking about, or whether it is friends and family. I think in general, I've been quite fortunate. Even the beneficiaries, there was, of course, initially they started with mistrust because again, somebody from Mumbai is coming to teach me, how do I manage my life? This is what usually is the starting point. But I think being a woman probably and the trust building was pretty fast. And I would go and sit with them, I would go and eat with them, I would go and sit on the floor with them, and I think that kind of broke that ice. And today when I go there, it's like a festival. They love me so much, and I love to spend time with them. I'm also fondly called it Pani Wali Bai. So it's, I think, amazing. And again, as I said, I've been fortunate to get good team members who are very supporting, who are amazing. We have had hardly any, attrition, hardly any attrition. That for genuine reasons. And people have migrated out of Mumbai, and that's why they have quit the organization. Other than that, we have had no attrition at all. I mean, people who started with me are still there. So,
brilliant. Okay. Yes. Sorry.
No, I think generally it has been a great journey.
I see that. It's written just all over, truly. Okay, before you leave, just last two questions. Are there any books coming up? Any upcoming books that you're working on? You are? Okay.
So I written 3 books in different areas of management. Now I'm working on 4th book, which is on development sector, of course. So I'm writing a book on scaling up an organization. How do you scale up an organization in the development sector? Because we have been a pretty one of the fastest growing organizations, probably just 6 years old and already being supported by likes of Azim Premji Philanthropic Initiative, Deloitte, Virat Kohli Foundation, then a couple of large foundations in US. So I think we have done pretty well for ourselves, and I thought it is important that we share our story and we share what we have done right and our failures, so that people don't repeat the same failures. They can learn from our failures where we have messed up. So I am putting all this down because this country, our country, really needs a lot of new organizations
Mm.
learn, who should scale up fast, who should contribute to meeting United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So for that, I'm penning down all my experiences. Of course, I'm an academician. Ultimately, I started my life as an academician, so I will definitely give a lot of gyan also. It's not only going to be experiences, but a lot of gyan also. So,
Looking forward to it. And yes, and also I'm also, want to read about your experiences, because the little that we had spoken together today, the tidbits that you have shared, the nuances that you have shared, that goes a long way. The simple fact that you're fondly called Pani Wali Bai, that says, it's a simple line. It's just 2, 3 words, but it says so much. So I'm sure people would be really interested to know this side of you as well.
absolutely.
Yes, and last of all, Doctor, how can we contribute as the common people, me, my colleagues, others, whoever I'm going to spread the word to? How can we contribute?
Yeah. So, we are constantly looking for ideas because, this sector it's not easy. It's a very challenging sector, and a lot of out of box thinking and a lot of brainstorming with people who could come out with ideas is required. So we are constantly looking for people who could brainstorm with us, who could share their thoughts, who could share best practices. We are also constantly looking for best practices. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. If something has been tried and tested in some part of the country, and if I come to know about it. So I think we are constantly looking for people who can advise us, guide us, who could, if they are nearby, if they want to spend time, they could spend time with us, on the field, contributing in helping us do fundraising. So there are lots of things that can be done. I mean, we are always looking for people.
All right. I'm definitely going to share the word, spread the word. And this was incredible, Doctor. I would so like to meet you personally someday. And yes, and definitely come over, because I was planning the Adi Katha trip. I was talking to my friends about it when I read about it, and I thought I'll talk to you a little bit and find out more. And once things are settled, I think then you will start again, right?
Will enjoy, absolutely.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much again, Doctor. And I think you are a superwoman. And all the best to you. All the best to you. And we need more people like you to keep inspiring us and doing the good work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you, my dear. Okay, bye bye.
Bye bye. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Now that's a truly incredible story. I urge you to go and explore our foundation and find out for yourself the incredible and amazing work the team has been doing over the years. Hats off to the team and Dr. Sarika Kulkarni, a beautiful human being par excellence. On behalf of Been Inspired, we wish you all the best. That's all for now, guys. Thank you for watching. Stay inspired.